Hi everyone and welcome back. I thought for our second video we'd do something a little bit different and take a look at a game that I really enjoyed from earlier this year, that being Kingdom Hearts 3. This video will have very minor spoilers for the parts of the Caribbean world, so follow your heart away from this video if that's something you care about. Where to start with the Caribbean? It's got everything. You've got a full remake of Assassin's Creed 4, aerial combat, underwater combat, ship combat, a huge open map, realistic cutscenes, and even an intermittently Scottish Elizabeth.
Gentlemen! Hoist the colours!
Well, it was f***ing one of yes.
But all of this does come at a cost. Kingdom Hearts 3 aims for 60 FPS and it just can't quite hit that target in this world. We'll take a look at how it performs in both the 1080p and 4K modes on the PS4 Pro and try to draw some conclusions about why that is. So depending on the mode that you've selected on your PlayStation 4 Pro, you can actually prioritize resolution or frame rate in Kingdom Hearts 3. And no, I'm not talking about that option in the menu. Avoid this at all costs. There are two modes, default and steady, and leave it in the default mode and never return unless you want to be looking at this.
Disgusting!
But thankfully, all is not lost. On the PlayStation 4 Pro, there is actually a system level setting which in some games can control the rendering resolution, and Kingdom Hearts 3 is one of them. In the PlayStation 4 system software, if we set the maximum resolution output to 4K or ensure that super sampling is enabled on a 1080p set, then Kingdom Hearts 3 will render in its resolution mode. This mode actually runs at 1296p, so not quite 4K or even 1440p. Setting your maximum display output to 1080p meanwhile, or disabling the super sampling setting, will force Kingdom Hearts 3 to run at a native 1080p. So while the setting isn't actually in the game, you do kind of have a resolution and a frame rate mode. While in the 1080p mode, Kingdom Hearts 3 generally runs much closer to its 60 FPS target. It's something of a performance mode. But even at 1080p, Kingdom Hearts 3 just can't keep a solid 60 FPS in the parts of the Caribbean world. I guess the rendering is just too lavish. So what's going on here then? Well, if we use the busy Port Royal area as a benchmark, we can see that whenever there are a lot of NPCs on screen, the frame rates are really closely aligned. As we move into this tunnel at the side, however, you can see the PS4 Pro's 1080p mode really pulls ahead. So this suggests that the reason they look quite similar when there are a lot of NPCs around is because the game is not actually GPU bound at all, it's CPU bound. This continues as Sora moves into the next section of the town. You can see that the frame rate graphs are really close despite the big difference in the rendering resolution between the two modes. So because in this area the game is CPU bound, it doesn't matter that the 4K mode is technically trying to push out a higher resolution, because the 1080p mode is not completing frames quicker than the 4K mode because the slow part is the CPU. We see this pattern repeated throughout this footage. Every time Sora steps outside the town or the docks, the difference in frame rate increases, suggesting that the CPU limit has been removed. So what about if we try and go to an area where there's less of a CPU constraint? This island, called Exile Island, for example, is in the middle of the ocean. Well, if we do that and then look at the frame rates, we see that on average the PS4 Pro's 1080p mode bumps up to 53 frames per second, while the PS4 Pro's average frame rate still settles around 42 frames per second. This is pretty much in line with our thesis. When the CPU requirement is lowered, the PS4 Pro's GPU is more capable of hitting the 1080p 60 than in the 4K mode. So what would I recommend? Personally, I would say just stick with the 1080p mode. While you're going to have pretty unstable performance in Port Royal, regardless of what option you pick. While exploring generally or during some of the later battles in this world, the game does have the ability to approach the 60 FPS line, and it really does make a difference to playability. Especially given the high resolution mode isn't even something like 1440p, I don't think it's worth giving up the extra smoothness that the 1080p mode allows. And that brings us to the end of another video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or want to sound off your opinion for which mode is best, leave a comment below and I'll be sure to take a look.